Welcome to this webinar. I'm really excited to share like a couple of stories that I've been chewing on for a very long time. Because yeah, like I've always felt that Drupal as an open source tool for building developer portals is probably like one of the largest players in the market. But then when the Backstage really started like growing and becoming much more visible, like it somehow stole a little bit of that thunder. And like now today, if you ask Gemini, or well, I did this, I did this question like, what are open source developer portal options? I asked this question in Gemini, and then also asked it in ChatGPT, and I'll have that screenshot in a moment. But weird enough, the first one that comes out is Backstage, and then as a second option, there's this API management focused portals, and then there's a couple of options, and they don't really make too much sense as open source developer portals, or at least as an open source tool for building open source developer portals. And if you put that together with like I did this webinar a couple of weeks ago about the different types of developer portals that we've seen in the market, then it really doesn't make any sense, because the portal from Backstage is a platform portal, and just one of the 8 categories that I think that are out there. So what's going on here? First, a very short introduction for some of the people that don't know me yet. I'm Kristof Van Tomme. I'm CEO of Pronovix. I'm a bioengineer by education, and that means that I like facilitating ecosystems both in the socio-technical world, so like I do a lot of conferences where interact with people, try to figure out like what's going on exactly in the API community. Last week I was in London, and then the week before that I was in New York and Chicago. So I get around a lot, interacting with people, trying to find out what's happening in the community. But then when I get home, I like playing with mushrooms and like the edible non-hallucinogenic types, and fruit trees and things like that. Our company Pronovix, if for those of you that don't know us, so we've been working in the dev portal space for 10 years now. I think this fall this winter is going to be 10 years. We've done a lot of research that's available on our website, pronovix.com. We organize the Devportal Awards. We do a conference about AI and documentation and APIs and developer portals, and the intersection of all of that. And all of these resources, recordings, and so on and so on. The podcasts that we record, like API Resilience and API the Docs, you can all find that on our website. So go have a look if you want to learn more about developer portals. So I mentioned before this short intermezzo that I did a webinar a little while ago about the different types of developer portals that people are building out there. So there's just what is typically seen as a developer portal is normally a consumer portal where people go to get access to API keys, or to request access from an API provider. There's catalogs. Some catalogs might just be Swagger UI for an API reference file that is being published, just like that. API registries are, and Swagger UI is an open source tool, so that could be a contender for the market leader in open source space. Maybe, although that I would argue not completely, because it's only a small part of the feature set that you need for a good developer portal. There's API registries. Registries are primarily built for governance purposes, to keep track of the API lifecycle and to help people that are managing API programs to keep an eye on what's all out there. There's platform portals, and this is the internal developer portal, the category that Backstage is a clear leader in the open source space. API producer portals, portals that help people to publish APIs. Marketplaces, these could be from one organization or an organization and their partners where they're publishing APIs. It's like a subsection of like the marketplace, like the more digital marketplaces. And then integration hubs, again, more internal focused, for facilitating integrations inside of a large organization. And then the last one, my favorite one, solution portals that that go beyond APIs to create a single place where you can go and evaluate what kind of interface you should be using to achieve a specific outcome. That is a little bit more business user focused to help people to figure out what they should be working with to achieve a certain outcome. So, but as I said, Backstage was mentioned as number one, even though that it's only one of these categories, even though it's only really an internal developer portal solution. So yeah, what happened here? So I think a lot, I don't know if I want to blame the analysts, but I think a lot, one of the biggest reasons why this is the way that it is probably because of the way that analysts are looking at the API management category. Because if you look at Forrester and Gartner, you'll see that API management solutions, like the developer portal, is seen as just a small part of an API management solution. So I've heard stories about like how the analyst interviews go, and you know, there's like very specific journeys that the analysts are looking for that need to be possible using developer portals. So as a result, all the API management solutions out there, and here's the ones that made it into the Gartner Magic Quadrant, or the Gartner Quadrant and its Magic Quadrant, like all of these have some sort of developer portal solution, or sometimes more than one. And I think this is the reason why, if you look at the results also in ChatGPT, same thing as in Gemini, that Backstage comes out, and then there's, I don't really know these, but then there's again developer portal solutions that are part of an API management platform, and all of these are kind of like, you know, the portal as part of something else, not the portal as its own independent standalone thing. Now, interestingly, and here's where my story about Drupal actually being the secret market leader starts coming up. Interestingly enough, two of the leaders, and like really in the top right corner of the Magic Quadrant, both Google Cloud, the Apogee solution, and the IBM API Connect solution, both have a very thoroughly used developer portal based on Drupal. So if you start digging, there are like some really big use cases for Drupal, and I think actually a really large install base is using Drupal today in the market, simply because of these two, and then also because of some other people that have used Drupal sometimes historically, that have adapted their portal and further evolved it, but essentially definitely because of these two here. Now, recently we also made a partnership with Microsoft, because of which Microsoft now also has a CMS option as a developer portal alternative next to the integrated portal and their API center that they provide. Now, if you start looking at some of the numbers, like how big is the utilization rate actually? So this is on Drupal.org. There's this weekly project usage statistics. Now, important to know here is that not all sites keep pinging Drupal.org about the presence of a module. This is a part of the inner mechanisms of Drupal that's being used to warn a site about security updates that need to be done on the site. in some cases you don't want to ping home. Like I know that quite a few projects turn that off because they're watching security updates in another place, like through the mailing list or something like that. But even so, if you look at the sites that have that module active, and there's some weird stuff happening here, like 1,600, which is like almost double from before. So like there's some irregularities in these numbers, but in general, there's about 1,000 sites for sure that are pinging home on a regular basis. Maybe these are like dev environments or something, but and like even disregarding the sites that are internal and that are maybe part of like a corporate network behind a firewall, that definitely won't be included in the statistics. There's a really significant user base just from Apigee. So if you add to that the IBM API Connect users that are using the Drupal developer portal, and I was asking at API Days London, and then I was also talking with the one of the architects at IBM, and they have hundreds of sites using the Drupal setup. So there's again quite a large number of sites built on top of Drupal. And then there's sites like Mercedes-Benz site that is using Drupal in a headless way. One of the attendees here also runs a Drupal portal in a headless way, where you're using Drupal as an API backend, and then have like some JavaScript frontend or something like that built on top of that, where it is not obvious what's actually happening in the background, where it's not clear that there's a Drupal site under the hood. And then if you put all of this together, I believe that a Drupal, I suspect, must be bigger than Backstage, just in sheer numbers. And then especially if you're thinking about all the different use cases, so not only the internal developer portal use case, but also all the external facing partner portals and so on, then I think that Drupal is a clear market leader in open source developer portals. Besides all of these that I was talking about earlier, there's also even some SaaS solutions that are using Drupal under the hood. And that might not be talking too much about that, but that also are providing their customers Drupal without being necessarily transparent about that. And that brings me to one of the other reasons why I think that Drupal is not as recognized as a market leader as it potentially could be, because in the way that the Drupal community has been working, and the way that things work when you're working with an enterprise market, is that there's this disincentive to collaborate. We at Pronovix, we've been always very public about the fact that we're using Drupal, and we have been doing some things in the open, but in the enterprise markets, it's not. What we learned over the last 10 years is that it was better as a specialist to be able to fully focus on this market. We needed to have some sort of head start. Like we did a lot of research, we did all these community events, and for that reason, we made the decision 10 years ago to not go fully open with everything that we built, because we needed a little bit of an edge. Because when you're working with large enterprise, you're always in competition with like an internal team, or a team that's like from service providers that might not be doing any of those costs to really drive the market segment forward, or to contribute back to the community. So if you combine that disincentive with the fragmentation of solutions across vendors, with the different types of portals that people are building, all of this made, I think, Drupal like an invisible market leader that people were not always aware of. But if you start looking, there's lots of sites that are all using Drupal. Yeah, so like there was in banking, in telcos, in like this is in AI, in modeling. These are all really well-known brands that are using Drupal under the hood. Besides this fragmentation and obfuscation of the market presence of Drupal, there's also some platform objections, or like some Drupal objections that you typically deal with when you're interacting with developer communities. Now, there's typically any developer, or most developers, you need to be careful because, but like a lot of developers are very passionate about the technology that they use, and often believe that their technology is the best, and you know, like there's a lot of PHP hate out there, and so there's some of that dynamic that's happening. But Drupal has always had a little bit of this is like a standing joke. I think this is actually in XKCD comic from a long time ago. There was this running joke that this is the adoption curve of Drupal. So you can, yeah. Now there's some research that the Drupal community has done that refutes this, but yeah, it was a long-standing joke in the community that it can be really hard to learn all of this Drupal abstractions before you can really get productive building Drupal sites and creating platforms in it. As you know, especially for when you're a developer that needs to create something using Drupal. And then we also had a really big event happening in the community in 2015. Like for a very long time, we had been working on Drupal 8, and I think it was actually 5 years that Drupal 8 was in the works, and because Drupal 8 was a really significant change from Drupal 7. Drupal 7 was an independent project, and from the switch from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8, Drupal got built, you could almost say rebuilt to some extent on top of Symfony. This had double effect. One effect was that it took a long time to build a new version. So Drupal 7 was used for a very long time, and it started looking like Drupal was losing some momentum. And then also Symfony was a shift towards a more developer-oriented way of working, because the dependency injection pattern, object-oriented coding, and a couple of other things was something that was a little bit harder to use than the previous patterns that people that rolled into Drupal that found their way into the community without having like a formal developer background. And I believe that this was a first step where Drupal, to some extent, retreated up market. Drupal became a tool for like big projects, for enterprise projects, for large organizations that wanted to have well-managed configuration and configuration as codes and a bunch of other of these patterns that made development harder and made Drupal a little bit less accessible. Another really big factor, I believe, was plugin versus composable modularity. What I mean with that is that WordPress, the big open source competitor for Drupal as in the CMS space, in the content management system space, had this the plugin modularity, as I call it, which is a modularity that is packaging capabilities in a sort of sandboxed way, where a little bit the way that apps work on a phone, so that you can install an app on a phone but that app is not supposed to get outside of its app context and to start messing around with things in other applications. There's a little bit of cross-talking between apps, but that's really strongly controlled. That's a security feature in the mobile phone space, but it's a certain way of building software that is making certain things easier and other things harder. The big benefit of it is that you don't really have to worry too much about unintended interactions between different plugins, because you know it's a standalone thing. It has its own pages. It does its thing, and then you know, normally there's no, or normally, I know that sometimes it still does happen also in the WordPress community. There's normally no incompatibility between plugins, or not too much. And Drupal, on the other hand, uses a composable modularity model, which is very different. Because Drupal's modularity, and there's a lot of modules out there, but Drupal's modularity is additive, like it's additive, and when you're adding one module into the system, the capabilities become available all across the whole system, and that makes it a much more powerful tool for building your own business logic, but it also makes it a harder tool to do things. And until Drupal 7, this capability, this functionality, made it a clear winner in the CMS space, because it allowed site builders, people that were not developers, or that did not have a strong technical background, to do things that otherwise they were not able to do. But then as Symfony got introduced, or this is my theory, but I believe that as Symfony got introduced and we started focusing more on professional developers and enterprise development, there was this friction between, or this tension between these two needs. The needs of the site builder that was interested in graphical user interfaces where they could do things and configure things without having to actually start coding. They could just use the GUI to do really complex things, and to build very powerful systems. And this more abstract coding that was required, or, you know, when you were building in an enterprise way after Drupal 8. And there was that tension that we got into the community. And then we tried in the community to build something like plugins for packaging configuration of those modules, so that we could deliver features, as they were called, from one site to the next, and just install a feature as a sort of plug and play kind of capability. But that problem with that was that had all the disadvantages of having a packaged piece of code without the benefits, because we did not have a commercial marketplace in the Drupal community, so there was not really a way to make money with features. Also, like when you were launching a feature, you had to like maintain it and make it possible to migrate from like to go along with any changes that were happening in the modules that you were using to build those features. So basically, features were first attempt to package configuration and to productize what we were doing in Drupal without really having this sandboxed way of working that was prevalent in the WordPress community. And I think all of this together resulted in the fact that today WordPress is humongously bigger than Drupal in in the web. So like if you look, the gray line is percentage of total of websites that W3Techs is tracking versus total percentage of CMSs. So there's a 60% of the CMSs or CMS websites that are out there are running WordPress, versus only 1% that is using Drupal. Now, if you start looking at some of the larger sites, so the top 1 million sites, you see there's a much bigger share. for Drupal, like you get to 3.8, and you see the numbers. So there's some skew towards larger sites and more complex sites, but still, Drupal was no longer the market leader that it used to be. Like at some point in the past, Drupal was much bigger than WordPress for some of the largest sites. Now, that's a little bit of the history of how did we get here, and why is Drupal not as visible or not as appreciated as a developer portal solution out there in the market. I believe that in the coming years, many things are going to change because there's been some major improvements in the Drupal community. And then also together with the AI trends that we're all trying to deal with, I think that the combination of these new developments in Drupal and the AI trend, that Drupal is about to have a really large resurgency as a web content management system, and then also as a developer portal solution. But what is Drupal CMS for people that don't know? Drupal CMS started as the Starshots? No, Starshots initiative, right? Oh, I'm blanking on it. But it started as a different name. It got renamed as Drupal CMS. Starshots initiative was an initiative by the core community. Like Dries was the founder of Drupal, was very much involved to accelerate the development of certain aspects of Drupal and to make Drupal again something that non-technical users were able to build interesting things with. And one of the core pieces that Acquia has been investing in, and Acquia is Dries' company, but then also other companies in the community, is Experience Builder. Experience Builder, currently called Drupal Canvas. It was renamed. I think it's a trademark issue. But what that tool is trying to do is trying to build, using React technology, build a graphical user interface that is editable in a low-no-code way, so that you can just like log in and start editing much faster using, again, this graphical user interface that Drupal is using to enable site builders, people that are a little bit less technical, to do really technical things. But it also is single directory, using single directory components, and it's also like connected to more modern front-end technologies, so that it also enables front-end developers to do more advanced things easier in a way that's more conform with what they're used to doing in other projects outside of the Drupal space. Now, and this is something that is very much front and center in the community, and it's talked a lot about this Drupal Canvas. There's a couple of other things that are really exciting. Well, I want to highlight one, the ECA model, which is a way to use triggers that are in Drupal's system to build workflows, to do really advanced business logic using a low-no-code way. It's very, very powerful. And these two, for me, link with the AI initiative, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But the one that for me stands above all of this, that I think will change everything, is the one that is replacing distributions. Because I was talking earlier about features and how that was Drupal's way of trying to ship chunks of code, similar to the way, like in a plugin model, the same way that WordPress was doing things. We also had distributions, which is a little bit mirrored from the Linux community, where the idea was that we would create different packages for Drupal that were geared towards a specific purpose. Like there's a couple, like Apogee has one, Apogee Kickstart, and then there's a couple of others that were built specifically for the developer portal space. But distributions were built also with this way of shipping code that was going counter to the strengths of Drupal, because distributions, like when you're using a distribution, when you're building on top of a distribution, you have to like go and fight with the things that are hard baked into that distribution, and then the distribution has its own maintenance paths, and you're now dependent on that maintenance path. So if there's like a change, like is there a security update in a module that's packaged inside of your distribution, you almost have to wait until the distribution adapts before you can, like until your upstream adapts the security update, until you can do the security update. This is the reason why we, as a company, when we're building for our customers, we haven't been using apt kickstart when working for apt customers. Yeah, so this was the old model that we had for creating a productized solution inside of the Drupal space. Now, this is being replaced in Drupal CMS with recipes. And recipes are solving a couple of different things. So one, they're composable, so they're pieces of code, a little bit like features, but without the need to really become dependent on the feature. So recipe is basically deploy it. It just configures your site, configures the modules that are underlying the recipe, and then you don't have to worry about the recipe anymore. Now you can just maintain the site and the modules that were maybe installed because of the recipe. You can just maintain those and the configuration of your site. So if you make any changes on top of the recipes, you don't have this fighting against the packaged, productized set of code that you have to do. And that's really, really powerful, because it makes it much easier to go and deploy subsets of configuration. Practically, the way that looks, there's two places that in Drupal CMS this comes out. One is in the initial installation, where you can like select some core recipes. This is all generic CMS recipes that you'll see here, because Drupal CMS is aimed at marketers. We are working on recipes that are aimed at developer portals. So there's one which is like on installation, and then second is afterwards as like an add-on kind of model, where you can add additional recipes to quickly configure your site. So I'm really excited about this, because this not only solves this problem of monolithic code chunks that are problematic both for their maintainers and the people that are trying to build on top of them. For the maintainers, because it's not fun to maintain a distribution or in the past a feature, because you're doing that for free in the open, and all you get is like just burdens and issue queues. So you don't get much benefits out of that. And it's also it's not a core thing, so it's like derivatives, and then for people that are trying to build on top of them, they're also not really great, because they might be so opinionated and then hard to change, because this configuration is kind of like baked into your system now, and then any kind of things you build on top of it, you might have to undo certain aspects of it. With recipes, you don't have this. Now, where this gets really interesting and exciting is when you add AI to it, because if you're using you remember that graph about the learning cliff of Drupal, that is a lot about new words that you need to learn, like Drupal speak, certain like capabilities that Drupal has, like views and entities and but nodes and all of these things that are very Drupal specific, and how those work. When you're using AI, access to that knowledge becomes easier to get into. There's some early examples. I don't have this in the slide deck. There's some early examples of people showing how you can use an assistant on the site to configure your site and to like add fields without necessarily having to speak those Drupal words, which I think will help a lot with the adoption curve for Drupal. But also, Drupal AI could be leveraging these recipes to quickly help you install new capabilities. So if you're a large enterprise organization and you want to have multiple developer portals throughout your organization, then you could, with this new system, you could build a couple of recipes for certain core capabilities that you want to have in your developer portals, or that you want to have available to your customers in your developer portals. And then that allow you to on installation to say like, okay, I want this and this and this, and then you compose it, and you have now the sites that the customer is trying to build, and without you having to go all hardcore products. Product police, to say it nicely, on the thing that you're building, where you have to be very, very opinionated and say like, no, this is the only way that we're going to do things, and all this other stuff we're not going to do. With recipes, you can allow for more composability, and which makes it easier to build advanced sites faster, and then yeah. Now, but Drupal AI is not only, or AI is not only interesting for Drupal because of this. AI is also interesting in Drupal because of the Drupal AI initiative and Drupal AI module. This was an initiative that was started by Freely Give, or well, I think the initial contributor might have been somebody else, but Freely Give is one of the companies in the Drupal community that has been investing a lot in building an open source abstraction layer for AI. And as you can see here, there's an enormous amount of providers. So these are all model providers that you can plug into the Drupal AI module. So you can, if you have your own AI module, your own AI model, you could build your own custom provider. So you can use your own model for this. Like Amazy.io is a hosting provider, and they're using an open source AI model that they're making available for their customers. We sponsored the Google Vertex model, the implementation of this one. But yeah, it's basically you can add additional models and then make all these capabilities that are in Drupal available for these models, and also bring the models into different areas. There's also different vector bases, databases that can be used for retrieval augmented generation. And these are some of the capabilities that are currently available as submodules in Drupal. There's an AI Explorer where you can just do like test queries in a visual interface. Like if you have multiple models that you want people to try out and see like which one they would like to use for their project, like in a developer platform kind of setting, then you could use this for that. Automators that are merging CMS capabilities, so you can add additional fields, and then you can do AI like LLM computation steps between fields to like prompt an LLM to derive the next field from a previous field. Like for example, for making an abstract from a blog post, or for generating an image where you have like certain boundary conditions set, or an icon, or whatever else you would like to do as a sort of automation step that you can build into the content model, which is super powerful, very interesting for documentation. Like because you could upload a REST API and you can generate an abstract from it. You could try to derive certain keywords from it, try to figure out who's the author of the API and things like that. Yeah, search assistance, of course, CK editor, that's like in the WYSIWYG editor, that you can add custom buttons, like for example, change the tone of a post, or like do certain reviews, etc., etc. There's also, yeah, as I said, automators is I think I'm really excited about, because you have to be careful with AI, because it is not actually. I always tell people it's safer to treat AI as if it's actually really dumb, and then like artificial dumb intelligence, something like that, because then you're not going to make the mistake to actually trust what comes out of it and to review it. So you need to have humans in the loop. But that's another webinar probably, or that's probably maybe the next webinar. But still, there's some really powerful things that you can do with this just to save time and to accelerate content creation, like especially in places where people don't really like writing. If you have one customer that is using Vertex AI to generate business documentation from REST APIs, and they say this really good actually. There's also other modules in Drupal, like AI agents. So there's an agentic orchestration that you can do, and setting up agents to do certain automated tasks is also very exciting. And so you can do this kind of stuff. And there's also MCP. So Drupal was one of the first MCP adopters. So if you go look on the model context protocol site, you'll see Drupal as listed as one of the early adopters. So and all of this, I think that I believe that there's a new like 3 big market opportunities, emerging market opportunities, where Drupal can shine going forward. And then also Drupal can shine as a developer portal. The one is vibe configuring, which is like you probably have heard of vibe coding, where you're using an LLM to build code and to build a software project. Typically, that is done using existing libraries, to accelerate development, but also to provide some initial constraint. I believe that a tool like Drupal, where you have a very rich set of graphical user interfaces that are already constrained, and where you're using AI to use those graphical user interfaces to build a system, I think that is probably a more safer way of doing vibe building of applications. So I'm very excited about this, and there's quite some work happening in the Drupal community, both with Drupal Canvas and with inside of the Drupal AI initiative. I think that from what I've heard from Jamie at DrupalCon in Vienna, which is in 3 weeks, I think that they'll be showing off some Drupal Canvas and AI use cases, like building a beautiful landing page using AI without writing code or without, in this interactive way. So very interesting and exciting stuff coming. There's some questions about where do you draw the boundaries for who gets access to those interfaces. Like we as a consultant, we like to nail down some of the UIs and the admin permissions, just to make sure that people that don't know the system don't break it. Vibe configuring is probably better done in a sandbox, but it can be very powerful to try out new capabilities or to do some prototyping to get some ideas about things you might want to add to your site. And we're looking at this as something that we'll want to start making available sometime in the future to our customers, but in a safe way. So as I said, very interesting, very powerful, will probably help with Drupal adoption. In a production site, you probably want to be careful with it, or you only want to apply it to certain aspects of the Drupal interface. Then the other one, the second pattern, is what I've called the AI search flywheel. What I mean with that is, because you have AI or large language models that you can build into your Drupal site, you can also log the questions that are being asked to it, and then you can use that to figure out what other contents that's still missing on your site that can help you with getting better generative engine optimization for the wider internet. So you can create this flywheel that helps you to build better content, helps you to be better positioned, so that your content gets adopted into the model, and then continue further on that. And then the third one is, I think, a shift from content management system to context management system, where I believe that some of the developer portal things that today are only available in the developer portal, like the getting access to a programmatic interface, you have to be a developer and you have to go to a developer portal. I believe some of these capabilities will actually be embedded in just general marketing sites. You see the A2A protocol that Google launched after MCP a couple of months ago, where you have an agent card that you can publish on your site. That basically tells an agent that is executing a task for a person what certain capabilities, like agentic capabilities, are available on the sites for people to do interesting things with. Similarly, there's the AP2, the agentic payments protocol that Google launched last week or 2 weeks ago. That helps to create safe ways to do payments in an agentic context. Some of these changes are bringing APIs much closer to end users, so that you don't necessarily need a developer in between. And I think in those cases, content management will need to expand its capabilities with some of the things that we're doing today in developer portals, to say like who gets access to what programmatic interface. Now, if you want to hear more about these 3 patterns, I'll be doing a follow-up webinar at the end of October, where I'll be talking about some of this. I'll go also a little bit deeper on Drupal AI and what are some of the next generation developer portals that I think all of this is allowing us to build. Hint, hint, solution portals. And I hope that I want to leave a little bit of time for questions. I hope that this was interesting and that you've learned something. If you're not on our newsletter yet, and I think Katja or Zoli will share the link in the chat also, that QR code gets you to a form where you can sign up for a newsletter, where there's webinars like this one about this one and the one about different types of portals. And also feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or to request a one-on-one session to talk about your specific strategy. I'd like to thank all of you for staying on the webinar, and I want to open the floor for questions. Are there any questions?